The meeting of the Administrative Charge and Statewide Administrative Charge Committee is now in session.
You want to do a roll call, Stu?
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. This is a roll call for the people, the folks who are in attendance to this meeting. Stuart Russell, Chairman.
Yeah.
Next person.
Brennan,
Oh, I didn't see that. What was that?
Kurt Smoke.
Mayor.
Oh,
We still can't hear you.
no, it's not.
There you go.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you're fine now.
Thanks. Sorry.
Okay. Rodney, you're on.
Rodney Burrell, present.
And the commission here is Al Leibno, Executive Director, PCTC.
Katie Johnson, PCTC.
And Matthew Milady from the Office of Attorney General.
I have not received any request from anyone outside of our group here to be in attendance today. So it'll just be our regular folks here conducting this meeting.
Next thing you know, they're gonna put butterflies.
Okay.
All right.
I swear.
Is there any new business?
Yes, there is some, but I thought it would be better to discuss it during the closed session. As regards to how we will conduct the meeting after Mr. Brennan and I and Mr. Milady kind of put our heads together, and there was some discussion as to whether or not the committee will concern itself with the department's decision to exonerate or unfound charges against their officers. We are more inclined now to deal only in the terms of whether the committee will charge administratively or not charge administratively.
Okay, that discussion really, unless Mr. Milady disagrees, should occur in the open session.
Okay.
It should not include the name of any individual case that was the crux or the reason behind that discussion, but the discussion as far as decision-making processes by the committee is of public, I guess, information concern. So it should be discussed in the open meeting.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for correcting me. Well, based on some conversations, the topic came up of whether or not part of our discussion should be whether or not a officer disposition should be exonerated versus unfounded. And after some discussion and consultation with our legal counsel, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the decision and discussion centered around we were only to concern ourselves with either the officer was administratively charged or not administratively charged. Whether it was exonerated or unfounded was not something we should be concerning ourselves with.
Stuart, if I may, in the case where it's not administratively charged, we then have the options of saying they're exonerated, unfounded, but Matthew also pointed out we could make no response, which is something that I was not aware of. But I think the one of the things that we also cleared up was during my training, and actually confirmed this with one of my neighbors who I attended with, we were actually told officers preferred to be exonerated, and I think we have been instructed that that is not the directions that we should be taking. We should either exonerate or unfounded based on the facts of the file.
Mr. Milady, you have any comment on that?
No, I agree. I agree. The first step is to simply charge or not charge. And if the decision is to not charge, then the committee has a choice. It has the authority, but it is not required to make a finding of exonerated or unfounded. And I take the position that I don't think it was necessarily an accurate statement to say that an officer would prefer to be exonerated or have the case found to be determined to be unfounded. I think that's just a superfluous statement that really has no relevance. And so the committee can decide for itself if they want to go ahead and make a statement about exoneration or charges being unfounded, but there simply is no requirement to do it whatsoever and no prohibition against doing it. What the officer might or might not prefer should not be part of the conversation any more than what the complainant might prefer. Obviously, a complainant might want the most severe penalty, but that's not the measure of how the committee arrives at its decision. So the committee arrives at decision on both of those factors, independent of all others.
Well,
Stuart, just my point of view is that listening to all this, I'd prefer to just do administratively charged or not. Only reason that I say that is simply that if we get into those other issues, we're going to have to explain our standard. What's our standard for distinguishing between unfounded and exonerated? And I just think that it gets more complicated for us, and that it'll be more difficult for us to come up with one objective standard to distinguish those two. Whereas our main responsibility, I think, is administratively charged or not.
So to follow up on that point, if I might, the public safety article actually gives definitions for exonerated and unfounded. And so the definition for exonerated is the police officer acted in accordance with the law and agency policy. And the definition for unfounded means that the allegations against the police officer are not supported by fact. So there's your standard. That's Public Safety Article 3-101 definition. So, but again, it doesn't have to be an all or none thing. You might have a particular case where it stands out to say, that the committee decides in this particular case, we want to go to that step 2 and make a decision as to unfounded or exonerated, or not.
Yeah, Matt, that's where I was talking about an objective standard. I knew about the definitions from our training, but why we pick one case over another?
Oh, I got you.
To say something is where I have the concern.
I just think we need to be consistent in the way we apply these standards. And I think as we get into this, we're going to be able to ferret out the differences and be able to delineate between what's exonerated and what's unfounded.
Well, again, I think the main standard that we all agree upon is that the committee first responsibility is to determine whether it agrees to the incident should be charged or not administratively charged. And if it's a case between exonerated and unfounded, and the department says that the person is exonerated, I think we should honor that as well as unfounded, unless it's something totally just stands out like a sore thumb that we need to inject ourselves into, determining a definition for one or the other, because ultimately they both are exonerating the officer from any wrongdoing. Whether it be exonerated or unfounded, the officer is not guilty of the allegations. And as I said, that's what's most important to these officers out here. So rather than get into a whole lot of discussion and taking up time, I think once we determine that the person is not going to be administratively charged, I think we need to move on. That's just my opinion. So
a couple of things I'd like to comment on there is if an agency makes a recommendation not to charge and to exonerate or find it was unfounded, it's not so much a matter of honoring that recommendation. It's the ACC would make its decision independent.
Mhm.
And so so that's one thing. And then the second point is, you know, the committee should make a decision. Do you want to say, okay, we've made a decision not to charge, and I recommend against a blanket. We are going to use exoneration or we're not going to do it. And then make a determination. In this case, do we want to consider it and take a quick vote? And if you want to consider that phase, then you do it and then you decide, or you decide not to and you move on.
Okay. All right. We haven't heard from Mr. Burrell. How do you feel about that, sir?
Well, I feel the same way that, you know, it's either unfounded or exonerated, or whichever the agency prefers with the verbiage.
Okay. All right. Well, as Mr. Milady had just said that we can address it if it becomes an issue for the board or a member of the board. We can discuss it at that time, as opposed to just blanketly saying, you know, we're not going to concern ourselves with it. So did I state your position correctly, Mr. Milady?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. Okay. That was it. That was the new business.
Okay. Just need a motion to go into closed session, and Katie, you'll read that statement.
Okay. I make a motion. Oh, well, is anyone, I'm sorry, does anyone want to put a motion on the table to go into closed session?
So moved.
Those in
I
favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passed. Ms. Johnson, if you would.
All right. All right. It is proposed that the statewide administrative charging committee's open session of its fourth meeting on May 25th, 2023 be adjourned to a closed session. The session will be closed under the authority of general provisions, articles section 3-305B, sections 1, 2, and 7 annotated Code of Maryland. The reasons for closing the session may be to discuss the appointment and employment of an individual over whom the committee has jurisdiction, and to protect the privacy or reputation of an individual with respect to a matter that is not related to public business. During this closed session, the topics to be discussed are administrative charging committee cases.
Yeah, we are now back in an open meeting.
Okay. The results of the committee's finding, there were 24 cases where the committee voted not to administratively charge, and 14 cases that the committee administratively charged, with 3 cases tabled.
Instead of saying tabled, request
Additional information. Well, they were tabled for additional information.
Well, yeah, they're being tabled because we can't decide on them until we get the additional information. So we're putting them aside until that time.
I think that's the point that Mr. Brennan was trying to make, is that you're tabling them because you're going to request additional information.
Correct.
Great.
Okay, so Mr. Lehman, do I make a motion to close the meeting?
Yes, sir, you may. Well,
Okay.
somebody can make a
You mean
motion.
adjourn the meeting?
Is there a motion to close the meeting?
You mean to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Yes, I'm sorry, to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I second the motion.
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Jeff. Appreciate it. Take care. Have a great evening.